I want to read a couple of scriptures this afternoon for my text. First from Hebrews chapter 10, and then a word of spiritual direction to the church in Smyrna in Revelation chapter 2. First from Hebrews chapter 10. But recall those earlier days when, after you had been enlightened, you endured a hard struggle with sufferings, sometimes being publicly exposed to abuse and persecution, and sometimes being partners with those so treated. For you had compassion for those who were in prison, and you cheerfully accepted the plundering of your possessions, knowing that you yourselves possess something better and more lasting. Do not therefore abandon that confidence of yours. It brings a great reward. For you need endurance, so that when you have done the will of God, you may receive what was promised. For yet in a very little while, the one who is coming will come and will not delay. But my righteous one will live by faith. My soul takes no pleasure in anyone who shrinks back. But we are not among those who shrink back and so are lost, but among those who have faith and so are saved. And from Revelation chapter 2, verse 8, and to the angel of the church in Smyrna write, these are the words of the first and the last, who was dead and came to life. I know your affliction and your poverty, even though you are rich. I know the slander on the part of those who say that they are Jews and are not, but are a synagogue of Satan. Do not fear what you are about to suffer. Beware, the devil is about to throw some of you into prison, so that you may be tested. And for 10 days you will have affliction. Be faithful until death, and I will give you the crown of life. Let anyone who has an ear listen to what the Spirit is saying to the churches. Whoever conquers will not be harmed by the second death. This is the word of the Lord. I've never been very comfortable at all in teaching or preaching about Satan or the devil. And yet, Satan or the devil is noted twice in the text in the word of spiritual direction to the church in Smyrna. And the church there is affirmed for its faithfulness, for its patient endurance in times of persecution. But the spiritual direction comes to the church in Smyrna as a reminder that there is even a greater yet limited test that is coming to the church. The devil is about to throw some of you into prison for 10 days. But those who overcome, those who conquer, and remain faithful will not experience the second death. When Tom Wright was with us earlier this year, one of us asked the question, I think it was at the pastor's retreat, about evil and nature of evil, and he admitted he was not too interested in talking about the devil or Satan either, but when he was writing his book, Evil and the Justice of God, his wife told him, I wish you'd put your pen down and stop writing that book, because there were all kinds of difficulties in the church and in their lives. And they shared together that they had been involved in spiritual warfare during that time. Recently reading a new book by Richard Stearns, president of World Vision, with the reminder that if you want to see the reality of evil, go to a part of the world where the poor are marginalized. And you will see evil at work, and we'll be reminded in those places that we wrestle not with flesh and blood, but against the principalities and the powers and the rulers of this present darkness. And so we ought not to be surprised, even though evil perhaps does not take the same manifestation it does in the third and fourth world here in our presbytery. Nevertheless, we understand that our own personal life and the life of our church, that the devil has us in his hair sights. And if there's one thing that Satan would like to do in this presbytery and across the Presbyterian Church USA, it would be to discourage us to the degree that we would be tempted to shrink back and to be unfaithful in persevering in the mission of Jesus Christ. I thought of that movie that was out a number of years ago, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. Except now, perhaps the title could be Honey, I Shrunk the Church. The evil one would like nothing more than to shrink the church, to limit the influence and the power of the church, to discourage us so much that we shrink back from faithfulness to the mission that he has given us. There's plenty of evidence that the evil one is having a field day in Western culture in this postmodern world, where the great cathedrals of Europe are by and large empty of people. Not long ago, there was a report posted on ABC News and Web, on their website, by AP Press, reminding us of how this economic recession is creating a mindset within churches and temples and synagogues and religious institutions of all kinds, the mindset of downsizing. If big business, if corporate America is having to downsize because of the economic recession, then it's almost unpatriotic for that mindset not to be at the heart and the center of the church. And indeed, you look at the statistics that are published every year in the Presbyterian Church USA, and you're reminded that every year at a General Assembly, or every other year now, that we lose another certain number of thousand of members from our church, that we're being pressed to shrink. I was in Louisville recently, and one of my friends there told me that when the denominations were united in the early 1980s, at the national headquarters overlooking the Ohio River, that beautiful place, that there were some 650 employees there. Now, there are just barely 300. And some of the critics of the church celebrate every time there's a 70,000 membership loss. I've been around this presbytery long enough to know what some of the statistics, even of perhaps the healthiest presbytery in our denomination, are. In Los Ranchos Presbytery, in 1969, as I recall the statistics as we were studying new church development, we had over 40,000 members in all the churches in this presbytery. At the present time, we have barely over 20,000. What that says to me, that in times both of prosperity that we experienced in the 80s and the 90s, and now again in time of economic recession, we are shrinking, being squeezed, and tempted to shrink back from the mission that God has given to us. What has come to my mind is this question. What kind of leadership does the mindset of downsizing require of the leadership of the church?